It's strange, isn't it, to think that the single most iconic superhero in the world, the face of the entire genre, or should I say superheroes, the one who started the foundation for it, is also the one who sparks the most debate: Superman. This is a character who was born not out of cynicism but out of imagination, out of two young men in the late 1930s who dreamed of a protector, a champion, a symbol of hope, and yet fast forward to now and Superman has somehow become one of the most controversial figures in modern pop culture. You would think the debate would revolve around edgy characters like anti-heroes or morally grey vigilantes, but no. It's Superman, the guy in bright blue tights with a red cape who stirs the most fire. The question is, when did Superman become so controversial? To understand why he divides audiences now, we have to first look at what he meant back then. When Superman debuted in Action Comics issue 1 back in 1938, the world was in the grip of the Great Depression. People needed something simple, something clear, and Superman was exactly that. A man of impossible strength who fought for the little guy. There was no irony in him, no detachment. He was earnest, pure, and almost aggressively sincere. And that sincerity wasn't corny at the time. It was life-saving. Audiences connected instantly. Superman wasn't a puzzle, he was a promise. So through the golden age and silver age of comics, Superman was less of a character and more of an ideal. The George Reeves television Superman in the 1950s had this fatherly confidence, this strong but gentle presence. And when Christopher Reeve donned the cape in 1978, he became the definitive face of Superman for an entire generation. Richard Donner's film wasn't trying to make Superman cool or edgy, it leaned into the myth. The tagline said it all: "You believe a man can fly." Audiences wanted that sense of wonder, and for a time, Superman was untouchable. The debate didn't exist because there wasn't anything to debate. But the reality of the thing is, culture changes. Audiences change, definitely. By the 1980s and 90s, darker heroes like Batman began stealing the spotlight. Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Tim Burton's Batman showed audiences a grittier, more tortured side of heroism. Then came the rise of anti-heroes, characters like Wolverine, Deadpool, Spawn, who thrived on moral ambiguity and rebellion. Against that backdrop, Superman's old-fashioned purity started to look to some like a relic. Too simple, too clean, too perfect. Where's the drama in a guy who always does the right thing? Where's the realism in an age where audiences wanted heroes who bled, who failed, who stumbled through the grey? Superman suddenly started to become a harder sell. When the 2000s rolled around, they tried to answer that with Superman Returns in 2006, starring Brandon Routh as Superman. That film leaned hard into nostalgia, almost as if it wanted to bottle the magic of Donner's Superman and hand it back to a new generation. For some it worked, it was reverent, it was emotional, a love letter. For others it felt stuck in the past, or willing to push Superman forward. Routh himself delivered a heartfelt performance, but the movie's lukewarm reception showed the dilemma. Do you honor the myth as it was, or do you try to reshape it for today? Even later, when Routh reprised his role in the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover, fans lit up with appreciation because it proved there was always a hunger for Donner's style idealism, but it also proved how impossible it is to satisfy everyone at once. Then also came Zack Snyder's Man of Steel in 2013, a film that dared to reinvent Superman for the modern era. Snyder's Superman wasn't the smiling Boy Scout in bright primary colors, he was a conflicted alien, unsure of his place, weighed down by the enormity of his power. Some people loved it, calling it bold and fresh, others hated it, saying it kind of betrayed everything Superman was supposed to be. And in that split, the seeds of controversy really took root, because suddenly Superman wasn't just a character anymore. It was a battlefield for different philosophies of storytelling. And what's funny is that now that James Gunn's Superman has come around, it seemed to have gotten worse. For some, Gunn's Superman is a breath of fresh air. Faithful to the source material, earnest in his optimism, unapologetically hopeful in ways superhero films haven't dared to be in years. For others though, it's nothing but a target. It's too corny, it's too safe, it's too simple, it's trying to do too much. People are actively hating on the film that at its heart is about respecting what Superman has always stood for. I mean, it's almost comical when you think about it. A movie that literally tries to honor Superman's essence gets roasted for being, well, too much like Superman. And hanging over all of this is the ghost of Zack Snyder's Superman. To this day, a huge portion of the fanbase refuses to accept any other iteration as valid. For them, Cavill's Superman, angsty, conflicted, godlike and tragic, is the only one that matters. To some, Snyder's take wasn't just a version of Superman, it was the definitive version. And so, Gunn's Superman, no matter how faithful or lovingly crafted it is caught in a crossfire it can never escape. If Superman smells, he's too cheesy. If he broods, he's too dark. If he saves a squirrel, he's unserious. If he levels a city fighting Zod, he's reckless. You can't win. And yet, alongside all of this cinematic turmoil, Superman has also thrived in other television medias, like the CW's Superman and Lois that carved out a space for a quieter, more grounded take on Clark Kent, showing him not just as a savior but as a father, a husband, a man balancing cosmic responsibilities with family life, and for many this series nails that. They've always wanted a Superman who feels human without sacrificing his ideals. Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal may not be as mythic as Reeve or as brooding as Cavill, but it has heart, and it proves that even on the small screen, Superman can still find a new life and a new resonance. And that's what makes him so fascinating and also so divisive at the same time. Because Superman embodies tension. On one hand, he is the ultimate power fantasy, the strongest being on Earth, invulnerable, godlike. On the other, he's meant to be the most human, the most empathetic, the most selfless. That paradox has always been there. But the debate really ignites around what we expect heroes to represent in different eras. For some, Superman's unwavering hope is inspiring, exactly what we need in a cynical world as ours. For others, it feels naive, outdated, and even boring. For some, a darker Superman wrestling with doubt and moral compromise feels richer. For others, it feels like sacrilege, like sending off the character's core. And it doesn't help that Superman's simplicity makes him a kind of blank canvas. Everyone projects their own expectations onto him. Some fans want the Christopher Reeve's idealism, some want the Henry Cavill gravitas, some want the animated series where he balances warmth and strength. Some cherish Brandon Routh's earnest tribute, some love Tyler Hoechlin's grounded family man, and every time a new actor does the cape like David Corenswet now, the debate reignites. The truth is, no version of Superman will ever satisfy everyone. He's not like Batman who thrives in darkness or Spider-Man who thrives in relatability. Superman thrives in interpretation, and interpretation by its very nature divides. What's ironic is that the very things people argue over what makes him timeless, his purity versus cynicism, his simplicity versus complexity, his myth versus humanity, these aren't weaknesses, they are the reason he endures. Because Superman isn't just a character, he is more of a question. He forces us to ask, what do we want from our heroes? Do we want them to reflect the world as it is, messy and broken, or do we want them to reflect the world as it could be, clear and hopeful? Superman sits in that tension and every generation answers differently. So when people scream online about Gunn ruining Superman or Snyder saving him, what they're really screaming about is themselves, their values, their ideals, their longing for the hero they grew up with. Superman is controversial, not because he changed, but because we did. And he's controversial because he matters enough to argue about. If he didn't, we'd have let him go a long time ago, but we haven't. Instead, we still fight over the guy in the cape, which if you think about it, it is kind of hilarious. The strongest man in fiction and he's powerless to stop the internet from arguing. That sounded way funny in my head. So when did Superman become so controversial? Maybe the answer is that he has always been. Whether it comes to his immigrant controversy that's happening now and happened a long time ago, or from the anti-comics treaties of 1954, Superman has always been controversial. Maybe the controversy was inevitable from the start, because Superman is the purest distillation of heroism, and purity is polarizing. Some people are comforted by it, others are suspicious of it, some see hope, others see hypocrisy. Superman has been called boring, outdated, or realistic. He's also been called timeless, essential, inspiring. Both can be true at once, and maybe that's the point. Superman doesn't need to be universally loved to matter. In fact, his very divisiveness might be the clearest proof of how deeply he matters. Because if he were irrelevant, no one would argue about him. No one would fight over how he should be portrayed. No one would care. But people care. They care enough to argue, to debate, to defend, to tear down. Superman in his cape and his colors still commands that passion. And that means something. Superman began as a dream in a time of despair, and today he continues to reflect our own hopes and fears back at us. The controversy will never end, and definitely will not die down. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's what keeps Superman alive. Not a certainty of who he is, but an endless conversation about who he could be. And in that way, Superman will always remain the most controversial and the most important superhero of them all. But opinions are opinions. Let me know yours in the comments. And also, if you enjoyed this video in any way or took anything from it, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads or also help grow the channel. But until next time, I'm out.